Hi, my name is Kurt Hitty. I'm a partner at Barnes & Thornburg. I recently retired from the board of directors of the Ronald McDonald House after 10 years, including various officer positions. At Barnes & Thornburg, we're committed to the communities we serve, which includes representing and supporting Indianapolis's most important charities. We certainly count the Ronald McDonald House as one of those charities. Nothing is more devastating to a family than having a sick or injured child. It disrupts family life, work life, and the entire family dynamic, not to mention how scary it can be for the child. If you're exposed to the mission of the Ronald McDonald House, you can see the enthusiasm of the staff and the volunteers with respect to the mission. It truly is infectious. I hope you will join me in supporting the Ronald McDonald House in everything they do. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ron Collier. I'm the CEO of Indiana Members Credit Union. Many years ago, over 60 years ago, our credit union was formed around the IU Med Center and the family of organizations that surrounded that med center, one of them being, of course, Riley Hospital for Children. Through the years, we've been honored to do things with the Riley Hospital. And in the last few years, we've become acquainted with the Ronald McDonald House. The Ronald McDonald House is an oasis in a desert of uncertainty for families who have children, some with many dreadful diseases. Talking to the patients' families gives you hope, gives them hope, and we're just very delighted to be part of the Ronald McDonald House. Over the years, we've seen many families who really, they don't have a place to stay, and they want to be near just in case they're called to the hospital. I'm not sure what these families would do without the Ronald McDonald House. It's probably more so important now than ever before to help out the Ronald McDonald House. We're very grateful to be part of that and plan on continuing that for many years to come.
We feel so strongly about the work they do and knew there was more that we could do for them. Our Ronald McDonald House Affinity debit card is a way for our members to participate in the support. When they use their debit card on a signature transaction, a giveback is generated for the house. This year, Indiana Members Credit Union and our members are happy to contribute $10,000 to Ronald McDonald House of Central Indiana.
Hello? Hello, is anybody there? Have you successfully logged in? Oh, there you are. Good evening, everyone. I'm McDonald's Chief Happiness Officer, Ronald McDonald, but I think you already knew that. I want to officially welcome you all to the 2020 Taste at Home event benefiting the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Central Indiana. However, tonight's event's a little different than years past. You see, tonight we've reimagined the event and gone virtual. The Taste Gala has transformed into the Taste at Home event. I hope you're ready to have a great time while also celebrating and supporting the Ronald McDonald House. And now to get things kicked off, I'd like to introduce your host for the evening and my very good friend, CEO of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Central Indiana, Karen Ogden.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the craft beer tasting of Taste at Home. I'm Karen Ogden, as my close personal friend Ronald McDonald just shared. Ronald, here is a hug right back to you, my friend. So I am absolutely thrilled to have so many of you joining us tonight for our first ever online taste event. And so I know this isn't as glamorous as what you're used to, but know that from our end, we are just happy that we figured out a way to do it all and be together through the magic of technology. We hope you'll enjoy the celebration while we all stay safe and distance. And whether you're with your friends or you're in your jammies, we're glad you're with us. So taste is not only just an important part of our fundraising plan, it's also an opportunity that we look forward to every year to celebrate the mission of the Ronald McDonald House together. So just like life at your house, life at our house in 2020 has changed too. We've had to adapt and be flexible while remaining strong and resolute in our work to keep families close to their child in the hospital. So COVID has caused some significant interruptions in how we help families. At the height of the pandemic, we had a small number of families staying at the house. We operated on a skeleton crew while many of our staff were working remotely. At one point, we provided housing for families at a partner hotel downtown, and we even had to pause our volunteer program and our meal groups. But good news, we're bouncing back. Our staff are returning to work in person, in shifts, and we're slowly bringing volunteers into the house again, which is wonderful. We've missed them. We've hit our new COVID era capacity of 33 families, and these are all things we're celebrating. Most of all, we want to celebrate the fact that you have joined us tonight. And it is support from individuals and companies like yours that has allowed us to keep the doors of the house open and to safely serve families. We know it's been a tough year financially for many, and we appreciate those of you who made support of the Ronald McDonald House a priority, especially in an environment for some where sponsorship dollars may not have been as readily available. Your support has been critical now more than ever. Thank you. So I'd also like to give a special thanks to our food and beverage partners that donated despite their industry being especially hit hard. And lastly, I'm happy to share our gratitude with our 2020 Taste at Home sponsors and event partners. They are Vallejo Financial Advisors, Barnes & Thornburg, the McDonald's owner-operators of Central Indiana, Nordstrom, Indiana Members Credit Union, Performance Contracting, Inc., First Merchants Bank, Messer Construction, Trendy Minds, the National Bank of Indianapolis, Republic National Distributing Company, and the Taxman Brewing Company. I also want to extend a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Riley Hospital for Children at Indiana University Health. We are honored to be your partner in providing care, hope, and healing for children and their families. So if you've been following our journey in 2020, you know that we've had to temporarily close the house inside Riley at the onset of the pandemic. This closure really brought to light how much families count on us and rely on us for meals. And having the Riley House closed is creating an opportunity for us to strengthen and grow our programs there. I'm really excited to let you know that we will soon begin updating and remodeling the house. And this will help us better prepare and provide meals for families. It'll open with a facelift in May of 2021. So I could go on and on about the Riley team members in nursing, social work, outpatient care, and strategic leadership that we appreciate and love. Our relationship has certainly grown in the past 8 months. And one of those special people is Marissa Kiefer, a friend, a Ronald McDonald House board member, as well as the Vice President of Strategy for Riley Children's Health. And I would like to welcome her to the screen to share a message with all of you.
Good evening. I'm Marissa Kiefer, Vice President of Strategy at Riley Children's Health. Thank you for joining us for tonight's virtual Taste Gala. Riley is proud to be the title sponsor for tonight's event. As the state's only comprehensive children's hospital, we see patients from every corner of the state. And we would not be able to do what we do every day without amazing partners like the Ronald McDonald House. We have partnered with the Ronald McDonald House since 1982 to keep families together when children are receiving care at Riley Hospital for Children. In 2021, we're excited to expand that partnership with the opening of a new Ronald McDonald House family room in the maternity tower at Riley Hospital for Children at IU Health. Thank you for your support of this amazing organization, and have a great evening.
So families with a newborn in the intensive care unit make up the majority of our house guests. So we know that having a Ronald McDonald family room close by is critical to helping moms and dads recharge. So thanks, Marissa. We are so excited to share in the growth of Riley with you. So you'll recall earlier that I said one of the things we like to do at Taste is to celebrate the work of the Ronald McDonald House. So in 2019, we are proud to have served more than 5,500 families, accounting for more than 20,000 overnight stays. 90% of those families live more than an hour away. And we are caring for families throughout the state, all over the state, as well as neighboring states and even internationally. Some families log a lot of travel time to get here and can't turn around to go back home for essentials. And that's a lot of families spending time far away from home. And that's why the Ronald McDonald House, with your help, makes such an impact on their lives. So in addition to providing a room to stay, we're also nourishing people's spirits with warm meals. We're providing comfort and relaxation from tough days in the hospital. And we're fostering a sense of community and bonding to help families push through some of the hardest struggles they will ever face. I want to share a video with you tonight of 3 families that stayed with us recently. It really illustrates how much the house means to them and to other families.
When families are going through a time like with a sick child, there are so many things that they need.
A lot of our families, by nature of having children that are sick enough to need a heart transplant, I feel are very stressed. They're in a new environment in the hospital, away from their home, away from their family.
Being able to connect a family with Ronald McDonald is just a huge relief, I think, for us as social workers, knowing that as a hospital that we have that huge resource. That partnership with Ronald McDonald has been a huge benefit. Maybe you don't realize how beneficial something is until it's not there, and we've certainly seen that now.
Yeah, we really weren't even going to apply because we heard it was so hard to get into, and with COVID, we had no idea if we were going to get in or not.
If it was open or not.
Like if we didn't have the Ronald McDonald House, because I wouldn't think I'd be able to stay at home while my child is in Indianapolis and she's in the hospital and she needs her parents.
The tumor removal surgery, we needed someplace to stay because we had to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we live over 2 hours away in Fort Wayne. So the social workers got a hold of Ronald McDonald House for us, and we actually stayed for the first time the night before her tumor removal surgery.
The Ronald McDonald House does many things. First and foremost, it keeps families close.
Having the Ronald McDonald House close by can actually be sort of a life-saving resource, because we like to have the family stay there after heart transplant for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months until they get adjusted to that new environment.
Did a lot for my nerves, actually, being that close. Now I'm at the point where if I'm farther than the Ronald McDonald House, I'm
anxious, ready to get back.
Ready to get back.
To be that close, it really took the weight off our backs. If my baby need anything, I know I can just be there like a snap of the finger or a blink of an eye or something.
There's no closer spot than being at the Ronald McDonald House, and having families be in a safe environment that's that close can be a pretty big difference for these families.
She can sleep in and get the good rest that she would need in order to, hit that day that she's gonna have, whatever treatment it might be.
Well, because of Ronald McDonald House, and we're able to focus more on going to see our daughter and spending time with her and not having to worry about making dinner tonight or paying for the hotel or paying for gas to get back and forth from Lafayette. We get to just focus on Alani and
her health.
Yeah.
Because with the Ronald McDonald House, you don't have to worry about your next meal, because they're going to have it there.
They often provide a welcome basket for the family that might have some pasta and pasta sauce and some toiletries and things for them.
Toiletries and stuff like that. Anything that you need, they'll make sure you have it. So
a lot of times it's things that we didn't even realize that we needed at that time, and it comes at the right time.
The personal touches that Ronald McDonald House is able to make.
They have this little dog named Mac. He's like a therapy dog. He's just cuddly and soft, and I don't know, he just makes you feel good.
Is Mac your friend? Yeah. We try to play fetch with him, don't we?
For anybody thinking about donating, just know any little thing helps.
It doesn't matter how small your donation is. It doesn't matter what bit of time that you can give to help prepare a meal, whatever it might be. Families are so grateful for it. And they would not be able to make it really without that.
I know there are people before me that had to go through the same situation. And like, if I wouldn't have donated and the other people wouldn't have donated, there could be, a chance that one less person doesn't get in.
It is an opportunity for you to give back and make a difference.
Without people's generosity and kind hearts, it would be a struggle for families like us.
I can't say thank you enough.
There's a lot of hope that goes through that building.
That other people are out there that care enough to take the time to think about others.
So they're doing that out of the kindness of their heart, so that's really big, because it seems like since we've
been dealing with all this,
yeah,
it's like faith in humanity is restored. There are good people.
It warms my heart and inspires me to hear families share that our house is filled with hope. I'm honored to know the work we do with your help has such a positive impact. In keeping with our taste tradition, we'd like to share another family's Ronald McDonald House story with you live. So please help me welcome the Doc family.
Hi there.
Hello. Hello. Hi, Noah. And Emily, are you there? Good. So the Docs have recently become a family of 4. Noah, his wife, Emily, big sister, Evelyn, and new baby, Isadora. While baby Evelyn was still in utero, it was determined that she had a condition called bronchial atresia. And the best place for the baby to be delivered would be the Children's Hospital in Cincinnati. And they, like families staying with us at the Indianapolis house, had to travel hours from home for their child to get the care doctors knew she would need. They were initially staying in corporate housing, but after Evelyn arrived, they were able to move to a room at the Ronald McDonald House in Cincinnati, putting them just 10 minutes away from their new baby. Their stay at the Ronald McDonald House in Cincinnati prompted Noah and his friends and family to get involved at our house almost immediately once they returned to Indy. We are so grateful that they did. So Noah, would you share with us, with the audience, one thing that impacted you most from your stay at the Ronald McDonald House?
Yes. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having us. And Emily just said it's not fair to make us watch that video and then put us on the spot immediately because we were both about crying. But one of the most impactful things for us was just being there, having that sense of community. We were there. We were in the house. We got in just before Thanksgiving and stayed 71, 72 nights down there at the house. And so we were there for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and the whole holiday season. And just being around that community of people that were going through something similar to us, and having all of the activities that they provided just really helped put a smile on our face and just give us a good sense of community.
I'm curious to know, you were there during the holidays. Was there something special that stuck out?
Yeah, I think our favorite holiday event that we saw was the dancing Christmas trees. There were a group of volunteers that do this annually, and they put on these costumes that turn them into Christmas trees. And we were just full of joy that whole evening watching them walk around and dance, and the kids that were in the house just were in complete awe of them. And we were like, how do we get to be one of these someday?
It gives you a goal to aspire to. And it was truly like one of the times that you're going through all of these emotions every single day, where you don't know what's going to happen. And we were just laughing hysterically that night, and it just took us away from everything that we were going through.
Gosh, and it sounds like laughter so important. What I hear you saying is that dancing Christmas trees could happen here at the Ronald McDonald House. And that maybe that's something that you and Emily could do.
Right?
I'm writing that down. Dancing Christmas trees.
I think that's definitely something to aspire to bring some joy to some of the people locally. Show them some of the Cincinnati traditions.
I love it. I love it. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us and for allowing us to share our story with you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it so much. So for everybody out there, this is where you come in. Your support is what makes the house possible. You can be the welcoming beacon of light at the end of a dark day. You've already shown your commitment by joining us tonight. Thank you. We'd also ask that you would consider making an additional gift of support. One that will help us provide crisp, clean linens on warm, comfy beds. One that will help us keep our pantries stocked with snacks and meals. And one that allows us to help families when they need it most. So it costs us approximately $100 a night to operate a room. And I assure you, we never turn a family away for inability to pay. We rely on the generosity of donors and supporters like you to help keep our services affordable to everyone. So I'm asking tonight, would you consider a gift of $5,500? It would honor each family that we served last year. Or what about a gift of $1,300? That would underwrite the average stay for a family. Typically, it's 13 nights. $500 would fund a week's stay. And $100 underwrites one overnight for one family. We hosted over 20,000 overnights last year. Please know this, every gift given, oh my goodness, know that each gift given of any amount is important and it helps our families. So during the next 4 events, we want to raise an additional $75,000. So we're going to watch the heart fill up as we get closer to our goal. Will you help us to start strong tonight? So we invite you to give now online or using our new text to give platform. And there are special instructions scrolling at the bottom of your screen right now. And when you choose text to give, we'll all see our progress as we watch the heart fill with your healing gifts. Now, if you're a check writing soul, don't worry, we'll take it. Send it in, mark it for taste, and we'll make sure it gets counted towards our event total. Thank you for your generosity. I hope you've seen just a small fraction of the number of people and the way your support impacts their lives. We're going to watch the heart fill for a few minutes, and that's going to give you time to give and get ready for the tasting. And we'll be back and ready to taste in a few minutes. So that link that you've been available to text to give, it will be open and ready to give all week long through the last event, our last taste event next Friday. So now it's time for the fun to begin. I hope you have your kits ready as we kick off our first masterclass tonight. So we've been able to connect with the best of the best master craftsmen and connoisseurs for our tastings. So join me in welcoming Nathan, president of Taxman Brewing Company. So Nathan has a particularly deep knowledge and love of Belgian style beers. And having lived in Brussels for 2.5 years, he got to visit many breweries and to interview numerous brewers to learn the different techniques used to make their beers. So Nathan took what he learned and created the foundation for Taxman Brewing Company. So I might have had the opportunity tonight to sample, and my favorite beers are these two. So that would be Qualified and Bean Counter. So I'm excited to hear what yours are. So Nathan, take it away.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for including us in tonight's program. We're truly honored to partner with such a wonderful organization. Joining me tonight is one of our co-founders. I'm Nathan Olsebush, by the way. I know I was introduced, President and CEO of Taxman. With me is Matt Rogers, one of our co-founders and a great friend.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, I've known Nathan for 10 years now, and this has just been a steady march into pursuing the passions that he exhibited almost day one when I met him, and we've been trying to make a business out of it ever since.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of great beers to talk about tonight, to taste, and we're excited to dive into that. Before we get to the beers, I do want to give a little bit of background about Taxman Brewing Company. We were founded in 2013 in Bargersville, Indiana, which is about 14 miles south of Indianapolis, where we are tonight. A lot of people ask the question, why Taxman? What's the deal with the Taxman name? And Matt and I both professionally, before I left to do Taxman full time, and Matt still is a participating tax professional. But prior to the Taxman Brewing side, we are actually tax people. We were both. I'm a CPA. Matt's an attorney that practices tax. So we had a really great experience though professionally. In 2008, my wife and I got to move on a 3-year assignment to Brussels, Belgium. And all the beers that Taxman does are inspired by that travel and that experience that we had in Belgium. But along the journey in 2010, Matt moved to Belgium, and he had a couple months where he wasn't, his family hadn't quite relocated, so Matt became the third addition to our family while we were over there.
Indeed, yeah. I was looking for a different chapter in my life, and so the assignment to Belgium came across, and so I decided to do it. And little did I know that was probably going to be the beginning of a new life for me. And meeting Nathan and kind of going through the way that Belgians approach beer, it really kind of shaped the way that I thought about beer and just the way that it could be a business idea for us, and here we are.
So the amazing thing about Belgium is it's a country the size of New Jersey, but it has over 1,000 breweries, so tons and tons of breweries. All these small towns are built kind of around the city center, which typically has a brewery, a local cheese store, a local bread store, and so much of the culture, though, just revolves around the brewing culture. So each of these small towns in Belgium has unique yeast, they have unique ingredients that they incorporate into their beer, and it really creates this landscape of just amazing diversity in such a small country. So in our 3 years that we spent in Belgium, we had a book that was called The Good Beer Guide to Belgium. It had it probably had about 4,000 beers in it. And my wife and I, along with Matt, strategically kind of checked off the boxes. We went to all these famous abbey breweries and these Trappist breweries that were at these beautiful monasteries, and they've been brewing for hundreds and hundreds of years. And during that time, we really just took great notes, talked to the brewers, just tried to figure out what it is that made the Belgian beer so different. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that tonight. But at the end of our assignment in Belgium, Matt had already relocated back to Indianapolis. I was originally from Ohio, and great opportunity came along at Cummins. So Matt and I both worked at Cummins. We were tax directors at Cummins. Matt's still at Cummins, but Cummins really brought us here collectively to Indiana. A lot of people ask, like, why did you end up? How did you end up in Bargersville? Bargersville, if you haven't been to Bargersville, is an extremely rural community. It's got a lot of the most prominent sight line is these giant grain silos full of corn. So it's how did we wind up in Bargersville? The interesting thing from my house in Greenwood, I lived close to like Center Grove High School. You drive down 144 right through this little town of Bargersville. And every day on my drive, I'd think, wow, this community is really cool. It's beautiful. It's got this neat kind of country vibe. Why is there nothing here? Why are there no local restaurants that we can eat at? Why is there not a brewery in this town? It really reminded me of some of the smaller, quaint cities that we visited in Belgium. So lo and behold, one day I'm driving through town and I see that there's this building on a corner. It's dilapidated. It looks terrible. Just this old brick block building that's been overrun. And I said that would be an excellent brewery. I think we should put a brewery in there. So I approached Matt, I think, one day in the office, and I said, Matt, I found a building. I think we can do a Belgian brewery in this space. And from there, we just kind of built out the business plan and got going. So 2013, we started writing the business plan. By 2014, we had a full restaurant up and running in Bargersville and the brewery operation getting started. So in the beginning, we were extremely small. We were 500 barrels of beer a year. We sold everything in our tap room in Bargersville. Since then, from 2014 till now, we've expanded to have 3 restaurants. We have a restaurant in Bargersville at our original location. We have one here at the Cityway location, which is right next to Banker's Life, and we have a space in Fortville, in downtown Fortville near Geist Reservoir. In addition to that, we sell beer all over the state. You've hopefully seen our beer in places like Kroger and Big Red and Target and Walmart, and it's really taken off. So we're now the 5th largest brewery in the state of Indiana. We're the largest self-distributing, so we deliver our product directly to places like Kroger and Target, and it's really taken off. We've loved it. Indiana's been so good to us, and we're very fortunate in that regard. But yeah, with that said, we'll get into kind of some of the finer points of Belgian beer, and hopefully give you some background about Belgian beer that maybe you didn't have before. So Belgian beer loosely can be divided into 2 big categories. You've got the farmhouse ales, the saisons. Those are more of like the harvesters beers, the ones that feature very hyper local ingredients, and they're typically brewed with yeast that's sometimes wild. And by wild, I mean like it has Brett and other things that aren't traditionally thought of as beer yeast. So it takes on earthier notes and things like that. And then you have the Trappist style beers. So when I say Trappist style beers, these are the beers that have traditionally been brewed in the Belgian monasteries. At the time when we lived in Belgium, there were 7 Trappist breweries in the world, and 6 of those were in Belgium. So traditionally, Belgian beer has a little bit less parameters put on it. So in Germany, you've got the purity laws that say you have to have grain, barley, hops. You really can't use any of the adjuncts or interesting ingredients like that. Belgium, completely different. Like it's crazy. It's whatever things local or growing wild, you can go ahead and throw it in the beer, and it creates these amazing nuanced flavors that you really don't get in any other styles of beer. So a lot of our core lineup, though, focuses on those Trappist style beers, and we'll talk about those a little bit more. Almost all Belgian beer falls into the ale category. So if you're not familiar with beer, there's 2 major types. It's lager yeast and ale yeast. All of our beers use the ale yeast, and that just means it's a little bit faster acting, a little bit warmer temperatures when it ferments, and it also creates those interesting dynamics of flavor that we're talking about.
No doubt.
Yeah. So typically speaking, Belgian beers, the really dominant character in the beer when I was talking about those ingredients, that water, the malt, the yeast, and the hops. The yeast is really the driving force in Belgian beer. So doesn't usually come up when you're talking about American ale, but Belgian yeast creates these additional flavors, this clove, this banana, these peppery notes, things that you wouldn't get unless you were using an adjunct ingredient like a fruit or something along those lines. So that Belgian yeast really creates that dominant flavor.
Yeah, so are we going to pour our first beer?
Yeah, we're going to get into it.
Right? Yep.
So in your kit tonight, you have 6 beers from us. We're going to do, just for time reasons, we're going to only taste 3 of them, I think. If we have time, we'll taste them all. So you've Deduction. Deduction is our Belgian double. This is one of our mainstays. Qualified is a bigger version of Deduction, so it's our quadruple. And then our 2 seasonal beers, Bean Counter and Berry Ratio. And then you have Exemption and one of our bottle fermented sours. All right, so we're going to get into it. So first up in our tasting, we have Exemption. So if you will note that all of our glasses that we have here on the bar have this, this fancy footed glass. One of the unique things about Belgian beer is the glass. Glass is half the story. If you go into every brewery in Belgium, they've all got their own kind of signature style, signature shape. The key is that in Belgium they'll never pour the beer to the top of the glass. They want to create some couple fingers of lacing and allow some space for aromatics. So the first beer that we're having tonight, though, Exemption, it's a Belgian Triple. So what is a Belgian Triple? I think that's a lot of people are like, well, a triple IPA. No, a triple is it is its own style, and it's not an IPA. So a triple is best described as a Belgian golden strong ale. Typically, they're somewhere between 7 and 10% ABV. One of the key attributes to the Belgian Triple is it uses candied beet sugar. A lot of Belgian beers use beet sugar. When you hear the word sugar, you think sweet, like it's going to create this sweetness in the beer. Well, actually, sugar is a highly fermentable source of alcohol. So rather than creating sweetness, what it does is it creates alcohol. And almost all of that sugar is converted into alcohol. So what that does is that creates a lighter body. Even though you have a beer that's somewhere between 7 and 10% in alcohol, the body is much lighter because of that beet sugar.
Yep. And this is one of the first beers that we actually brewed as a brewery. So this beer, believe it or not, and we've been doing it for about 7 or 8 years, it's maintained kind of the original character and profile. So we're pretty proud of this one. This is a very special beer for the brewery and for us.
Yeah. So triples are going to have a golden hue. This one is slightly murky. All of our beers are unfiltered. The key attribute, though, like I was talking about earlier, is going to be the ester production from the specific Belgian yeast that we're using. So if you have a glass and you're drinking it tonight, the first thing you want to do is just take in the aroma. What do you smell? Like how does it interact with your senses here? What I get is some banana notes. I get some clove, and again that's ester driven, that's yeast driven. You also get kind of on the back end of that an orange peel quality and some of that sweet malt character. So the malt we use in this, it's a 2-row barley. So almost all beers are made with barley, predominantly 2-row. We use a Pilsner malt, so that's the lightest of the kilning. But you get that kind of that sweet barley note from the beer. And then, all right, from a sampling standpoint, let's...
You don't usually smell it that many times before you drink a beer, though, right?
Depends,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the taste, so in this beer we use 3 spices. We use coriander, orange peel, and lemon peel. And on the back, after it's down, if you just do a soft, like an exhale, you do pick up that orange note. It's very prevalent. Through the mid palate, you get the sweetness. You get some of that malt quality. And then on the front end, you just get like a mild hop bitterness. So one of the one of the key features to most Belgian beers is that hops are not a dominant quality. They're more an accent flavor. Theel an earthiness.
Just, frame the flavor. Yeah.
So
for 8.5%, right? You hardly even touch the alcohol. You just don't even know it's there. So it's well buried. It's a delicious beer. You have to be careful with this one, I think.
Yeah, this is a sneaky. It'll sneak up on you for sure. But yeah, so why is this style called a triple? And we traditionally, so I talked about the Trappist beers and kind of that progression. So at Trappist breweries, and again, these are monasteries. These are beers brewed by monks. You have a Belgian single, which is traditionally a blonde ale, and that's one that sometimes the monks will drink while they're brewing the beer in the monastery. It's kind of the workers' beer, if you will.
Yeah.
You have the double, which we won't try tonight, but deduction is our Belgian double. You have the triple, and then you have the quadruple, which we'll taste next. But triple is an indication of strength, so it is a higher alcohol beer. That's one of the reasons it's called a triple. But historically, there wasn't a lot of parameters put around Belgian beers and stylistically. So over time, West Mall Triple is probably the most famous triple. It's certainly the most widely distributed. That style, that specific brewery and that style kind of took over, and the triple style in general kind of molded towards that. One other thing that you'll note in our beers tonight as we're drinking them is they are fairly high in alcohol content. And Belgian beers weren't always high in alcohol, but they had a very similar thing to Prohibition in the early 1900s. And essentially, liquor, though, was banned. And during that period, ironically, the alcohol content in the beers crept up. So when that was repealed in the 1980s, I believe, by that time, all the beers had already gravitated upward in alcohol. So that is the Belgian Triple. That's kind of the background on it. I know if there are any questions, feel free to ask through the portal. But we'll move on. We'll move on to the next one. And if you're digging exemption from home, this is one of our mainstay beers. It is widely available. You can find it in Kroger, Target, Big Red, Total Wine that's just opening, all of the major retailers. It's a 4-pack, very, very easily available. So up next, you'll see obviously a clear distinction, clear change in color. We have qualified our Belgian Quadruple. So I would say that in general, quadruples are kind of the pinnacle of the Trappist set. Like, it is the beer that if you were kind of showcasing what your brewery is all about, your monastery, this would be the one that you kind of hang your hat on. This is a very, very special style. The most famous probably is the West Vladimi 12. It's a very difficult beer to get. Matt and I had the pleasure of getting out there. Very interesting story. So this particular beer, you have to call in on a phone line. It's unmanned, and it's always on a wait. And essentially, you call. I think my wife called 200 times in a day till she got through, and then they answer the phone and they say, "Come out 2:30 on Tuesday and pick up your beer at this time." And you drive in, they open the gate, you drive through, they load the beer in the back, you pay, and you leave. And that's it. It was a very unique experience. So our beer, our qualified, we've been very fortunate to win quite a few international awards actually with this beer. We took those great beers that we waited in line to try, and we said, all right, we like these characteristics of the quadruple style, and went from there. So stylistically speaking, you're looking at a 9 to 12% beer, typically with a very, very deeply caramelized beet sugar. So a lot of the color in this beer, if you look at it, it is like kind of that dark, ruddy brown. A lot of that color does come from caramelized beet sugar. But you're going to get a big plum, raisin, raisin note. You'll get a little bit of that ethanol smell from the alcohol.
Yeah, this is a beer you drink when you've had a really bad day. Just smells nice, it's beautiful, it's smooth, it warms you up immediately. This is why Belgians drink beer like this, because it's usually, it's cloudy, it's rainy, it's cold, and this is the go-to beer. So
yeah, it's great as you get into these cooler winter months and fall nights.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah. When I first moved to Belgium, I had apples and quad in the fridge because there's so many calories in this beer. You really can't eat a lot of food, so you have to moderate yourself. So I ate a lot of apples and I drank a lot of quad.
Yeah. You could almost use this as a meal replacement.
Totally.
But if you're again taking it in, aromatically speaking, you're getting some of that burnt sugar, little bit of the red fruit. So you're picking up some plum, some cherry, again like some of that sweet caramel. And then again, on the flavor.
It's almost like a port. I mean, it's almost like a dessert beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the velvety texture, some of that sweet malt character, the caramelized sugars, again, plum, raisin, some fig. As it warms up, it'll take on some additional aromatics. You'll get some more of that, some more of those intense fruit notes. So one of the fun things about this beer, and something that we get a kick out of. So we've got a couple of awards noted on the can. So we've got the World Beer Awards and the Euro Beer Star. We frequently enter this in competitions in Europe, and it's amazing because the Belgian beers, they do a great job with packaging. They're beautiful. They got these big bottles with the cork and cage on them, and then we've got this little can. It's just so American. And this has won gold medal at the World Beer Awards and at the Euro Beer Star Awards. So it's the last 2 years, actually. So it's one of the best squads in the U.S., and not just the U.S., but the world. And it's just so cool, though, to see it in those competitions alongside those amazing bottles and all that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's a delicious beer. Again, another one you have to be careful with.
Yeah. But one of our mainstay products, again, widely available. All right.
We're on to number 3?
On to number 3. We're churning it out. I think we're doing a great job.
Yeah.
This one might take a little bit longer to explain, though, because you do have to get into a little bit more fermentation science. I don't want to bore anybody with weird fermentation science, but
I'm going to move you over here a bit.
Thank you.
This deserves the full grandeur.
So about a year into our Bargersville brewing operation, we ended up buying a firehouse next door. And the firehouse has all these bays where they used to keep the fire trucks. And one of the great things about the space was a bay where you keep a couple fire trucks is also a great place to store barrels. So we have about a 7,000 square foot warehouse with about 4,000 square feet of old bourbon barrels and wine barrels. And the reason I'm talking about that is because a lot of our sour beers, they go through an extended maturing process in traditionally wine barrels. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But this is one example. All of our beers that are coming out of our barrel-aged sour series are going to come in the bottle format. And the reason we do that is one, when you're fermenting beer with bacteria and mixed cultures, it tends to be a little bit more volatile in how much sugar it consumes. So a bottle is much more susceptible to withstanding any additional pressure that you might get during that additional fermentation process. So all of the carbonation in this beer that we're having, this balance of sour, it happens in the bottle. So we add a little bit of sugar after it's packaged, and then it creates those tight, fine bubbles. That's what you call bottle conditioning.
How many months did it take to make this balance of sour?
So yeah, this balance of sour, the base old portion of this beer, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, was aged for 24 months. So it was matured for 24 months in oak barrels that had various different types of wine. By this point, the oak barrels are pretty neutral, like you're not going to get a pronounced wine flavor. But during that 24-month aging process, the bacteria that goes into those different barrels creates different levels of sourness. That's why it's called balance of sour, because it does have quite a bit of sourness. So there's two different types of acid that are produced during that time. There's acetic acid, which is if you've had balsamic vinegar, things like that. Acetic acid is the prevailing acid in those. And then you have lactic acid. Lactic acid's more like a lemon tartness. This has a pretty good mixture of both acetic acid and lactic acid. The reason it's called balance of sour is because in addition to the 24-month-old beer, we blend in a 6-month-old version of our deduction. So the deduction is slightly soured, and then it's blended with this older beer. So what that does is the beer that's 24 months old has almost zero residual sugar. It's highly acetic. It's very intense. The balance happens when you add that sweeter, younger beer. So it's a melody of those two styles. So the style of beer is pretty interesting. So there's this area of Belgium called Flanders. It's the Dutch-speaking region, and Flemish Red is the style, one of the styles, Flanders Red, that prevails there. Rodenbach, Grand Cru, fantastic beer, most famous beer from this region. Yep. But essentially, it is that style of beer that's aged on oak for a prolonged period of time. It has a balance of different microorganisms that are in it, and creates this unique and acidic beer. So, if you'll raise a glass with me, we'll cheers it up.
Cheers again.
So right off the bat,
smells sour.
Right off the bat, you get that acid, that tart cherry, just that intense sourness.
Yeah, it's a crazy departure from what we've been drinking.
Yeah. In some of the more nuanced styles of this, you might get some of that plum, that raisin, all of the things that you might smell in the qualified or the deduction. Some baking spice potentially.
Horse blanket?
You can just add that if you like. No?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, so you get that balance, that sweetness from the young beer, but then you get that tart kind of biting back in. So from a beer standpoint, this is described by some to be very similar to wine. I don't know if I particularly like. Yes, there are wine notes, but it's also obviously if you had a wine, I don't think you'd want your.
Yeah, if you had a wine, it tastes like that. I think
it might be bad.
Yeah.
But you do get that ripe, that red fruit, almost like that wine-like note to that. But very unique. So we have an extensive sour program. The reason we did that is one of the more unique things to Belgian beer is this concept of spontaneous fermentation, this concept of microorganisms changing really the narrative of what a beer could be. And if you've never had a sour beer and you're trying this for the first time, it really doesn't fit into the category that you would traditionally define beer. It is something that's not quite beer, it's not quite wine. It's a very unique profile. So we do have 4 different sour beers that we release every year. A lot of them are aged with fruit. This one is not, so all of the fruit notes that you get from this are 100% fermentation. It's 100% composition of the different microorganisms that are in those barrels. But fruiting sour beers is quite common.
How long did it take you to like this kind of beer when you're in Belgium? Straight away, or did it take a minute?
Oh, I think it takes a minute. Yeah, I think it takes a minute to say like because you're always working within the parameters of what am I experiencing, what am I drinking, and this definitely, once you understand the style and you get it, I think it makes sense. But it is unique.
But this is a classic Belgium sour.
Classic, yes.
Yeah, classic.
Yes. Well, while we're at it, I think we can probably have a couple more. I think we have some time.
I think we should.
Perfect. So I think up next, what we can do is we'll jump to one of our seasonal beers, and I'll tell a funny story about making a mistake and writing it. So when fermentation is very temperature specific, and early on when we were getting started, our power went out one night, and our glycol chiller shut down. And what that meant is that the beer free rose to a temperature that it shouldn't have, and it created some additional flavors in our Belgian Double, which is our base beer, that shouldn't have been in there. So rather than dumping a couple $1,000s worth of beer, we said, well, what can we do? We can figure this out. We can do something different. And we added fruit to our Belgian Double. And that was our first version of Cherry Picker, which is one of the beers that inspired Berry Ratio. So Berry Ratio is our Belgian Double deduction. We add 3 berries, and we add those berries while the beer is still fermenting, so it's not going to be super syrupy or sweet or anything like that. That most of those sugars from the fruit is fermented out of the beer. But we add in this batch, because every year we change it up a little bit. In this batch, it's blackberries, raspberries, and blueberries. We previously had chokeberries, which nobody knows what a chokeberry is. It's just a tannic berry that adds some body. But Berry Ratio, again, it's playing off of the characteristics that are already in deduction. It's similar to qualified, where you're getting the fig, you're getting the raisin, you're getting all those qualities, and we're just amplifying that with some additional fruit. So cheers.
Again. Yeah, you can really taste the fruit when it warms up a bit.
Yeah. Each year, figuring out the fruit application and the way that the yeast will interact with it is different. So each year, there is going to be varying iterations of it. So yeah, this is nice. It's got a.
What do you think about Belgian brewing? Do you think it's more art or more science?
If you ask a Belgian brewer, it's all
more art.
It's
right?
all art.
Yeah, it's more art.
Yeah. Belgian brewers are very much like winemakers, where it's it is what it is. It will be.
It's feel. It's intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely, I would say, definitely more in the artistic sphere. All right, we'll get to one of my favorites.
Oh, we're gonna do
now.
we're gonna do that one too.
Oh yeah, I'd say for sure.
All right, let's do it. Should we pour these in the small glasses?
Yeah. We don't want to get too drunk on camera.
Yeah, that'd be awkward.
So, Bean Counter is, I believe that was one of the ones that was said to be one of the favorites. Bean Counter is one of my personal favorites. It's a collaboration beer with a local roaster. We use Tinker coffee. So we use a special blend of coffee from Tinker. We actually serve Tinker coffee at all our locations as well. But we use a special cold brew blend. So the way that we apply the coffee to the beer during fermentation, so if I'm talking about fermentation like people know what I'm talking about, but fermentation is the process where the yeast converts the sugars to alcohol. So typically that takes about 5 days. Essentially, the yeast get into the beer, they consume all the sugars, they produce carbon dioxide, and at the end of it, they fall out to the bottom, and we pull them out of the beer, and you have beer at that point. During that process, after the fermentation is over, we essentially cold steep the tea, or cold steep the coffee beans into the beer with essentially just a giant bag of coffee beans. So it's a couple 100 pounds of coffee in this beer. It's a big tank, but you'll get immediately that robust coffee note. The base beer has a lot of more burnt roasted malt, so it plays off the coffee notes. And we do add some vanilla on the back end to just kind of soften it, round it out.
So this is the beer you want to drink now, right? Because if you let it sit for 6 months, the coffee's going to die a bit.
Yeah, coffee doesn't age well. It becomes somewhat acidic and just unpleasant. So.
Did you drink that without a toast?
Oh yeah.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, so coffee beers you should drink immediately. Yeah,
a very nice beer. Yeah, the coffee's big on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, and it does have caffeine. I will say that. So, it's not decaf. Drink it early in the day. Don't wait till the end of the evening.
Yeah, it's a breakfast beer.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think? Should we? I think we had another sour in the pack, right? Was it the cash flow?
Do we have the cash flow? I don't know if we have the cash flow up here.
We do, right? 15?
Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, let's do that.
All right, you keep talking, I'll pour.
Okay. Yeah, so, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah.
I'm still going to pour.
Well, first of all, oh, I lost my headphone. So sorry. I wanted to say, first of all, cheers to Bargersville. I feel like the town of Bargersville is responsible for Taxman Brewing. So here's a cheers to Bargersville.
Things, yeah.
I think my second question, or question I've been thinking about is, and I hadn't thought about it before, is how much brewing sounds like cooking. Were either of you, were you cooking buffs in your younger years?
I could say personally, I always aspired to, I always wanted to be a chef. I realized that that was probably a terrible idea and that hours would be awful. I will say that I think both Matt and I are very much, we appreciate food, we appreciate balance.
Yep, yeah. Yeah, especially when you were brewing in my place in Belgium. Remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of cooking and just that art versus science argument that I think art wins in most of these beers, but we definitely have the science behind it as well. And I think cooking is the same way.
Well, I think that, yeah, I think many of us want to travel to Belgium now.
I would highly recommend
You
it.
also
It's
mentioned,
an underrated place.
Okay. You mentioned Tinker Coffee. Are there other sources, other local sources for your products that you use to make your beers?
Sometimes, yes. So we have our hop audit series features different hops. So we're auditing different hops. Each fall we do a special version of that called Indiana Harvest, where we use hops from Indy High Binds, which is just south of 465 on the south side of town. We use malt from a maltster called Sugar Creek. They're local. And we always are featuring in our La Maison and some of our other beers, honey from Hunter's Farm. So we try to introduce local ingredients where it's appropriate. One of the difficult things with beer is the primary ingredient in beer is barley, specifically two-row barley, and that doesn't grow particularly well in Indiana. So a lot of that barley is sourced from places like North Dakota, South Dakota, the Great Plains. Cooler environments tend to do a little bit better. Minnesota. So we do use local ingredients, but most of our stuff's more of a regional blend.
Okay. Tell me, I'm dying to know, tell me the story about your logo.
This is brilliant. Thank you. That's a great question. So if everyone's looking at the skeleton with the top hat and the bow tie, if you're familiar with the quote from Benjamin Franklin, the only two certainties in life, I'm paraphrasing, but the only two certainties in life are death and taxes. Our logo is the embodiment of that phrase. So the skeleton, with death, obviously, and the top hat and bow tie, a little bit of Uncle Sam. So it's Uncle Sam meets the Grim Reaper, the death and taxes element there.
That's great. I love it. Death and taxes. A shout to history.
You had to figure out a way to
So
make
quickly,
text again.
Matt. Yeah. Tell me your favorite beers that you prefer.
Oh, my favorite beers. I'm a traditionalist, so to me, I love our darker flagship beers. So I love Deduction, I love Qualified, and I love some of the sours. To me, I think to do the double and the quad the way we do it, I think the nose on those beers are just amazing. I remember when we first did our prototype for the Deduction, he called me. It was like a Sunday night at 9 o'clock. He's like, "You got to smell this beer." And he lives in Bargersville. I live in Indianapolis, so I got in my car and I drove down there and I smelled it. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. This is simply amazing. So, to me, I love the darker, richer, sweeter beers. I think that's kind of where the sweet spot is for me. And I love the beers that we do in that lineup.
Nathan, what about you?
Favorite? It does vary. So we are very fortunate. We are a small operation, and we do a lot of different varieties. So we make about 45 to 50 different beers a year. So it's always, like I mentioned earlier, each year there's variations. It's not like we can't recreate that environment that we had the first time we made a beer. So every time that we make something, even if it's the second time, it maybe is slightly different. So it's always like, I think I'm very excited usually about, all right, how did this year's iteration turn out? So it's typically what new thing we have in the tank, what are we putting out? One of the beers that I thought was just super, we did a beer last month with chai tea called Chiversified, and just ended up like we cold steeped the tea similar to the way that I was describing our application with the coffee beans, and it turned out so well. It picked up the chai notes, just a great delivery of the tea through the beer. I thought that was just super cool.
Another good question. My producer just asked me, what's your best seller?
So our best-selling beer outside of our tap room is Exemption, the first beer that we tried tonight. For perspective in terms of volume, we can about 1 million. We do about 1 million cans every 7.5 months. Of that, Exemption's probably about 25% of that volume. So you're talking about a significant number of Exemption cans going out, followed by Deduction, the blue can here. So those are our most popular.
It's evolved a bit, right?
Yeah. It has. People have gravitated more towards.
Sounds like we've got one more question.
Oh.
Go ahead, finish what you were saying though.
Oh no, I know. So followed by Deduction. Those two are our mainstays and our best sellers.
Okay. So this is a fun question. What is a day in the life as a CEO of Taxman? What's that like?
Oh man, that varies day to day. In a non-COVID year, it's probably a little bit easier to describe. This year has been a bit turned on its head. The interesting thing, so most people that start breweries intentionally don't want to get into the restaurant business. We're fortunately, and we love it, in the restaurant business and in the brewing business. So I do split my time probably lopsidedly towards the restaurants. So my morning could start off, flipping chairs and mopping floors,
pulling weeds,
pulling weeds in front of the place if we have an event, to figuring out the production schedule for next year and having a meeting with Kroger and doing CEO stuff. So CEO is more of a it's a glamorous title, but
chief everything.
Chief everything is a better way to describe it. As a small business owner, you just roll up your sleeves and you do whatever you need to do.
Sounds like good leadership to me. Pulling weeds, making beer. Thank you so much to the two of you. I loved hearing the stories, the beer, the history.
Well, thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
And
appreciate it.
Well, so I don't know about the rest of you, but I am not an expert, but I certainly feel like I know a little bit more. Well, I hope tonight that you have had an amazing evening. And as of this evening, let me just check in with my producer. One moment, please. Drum roll, please. If you're at home, a drum roll. We're at $1,225, which is great. So that's where we're at right now. I hope that you'll tune in tomorrow and next week with our remaining classes. Don't forget to share your photos from your Taste at Home experience and let us know what you thought of this new format. So you can use the hashtag Taste at Home. And of course, you can still donate online or text to give. The options will be up on the screen in just a moment. And I will say this, I think about that video of the house and I think about the families, and what resonates me is that sweet family that talked about there's a lot of hope in that house. We need you to help us keep hope in our house and be available, be ready for families when they need us. Thank you. So I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to thank our staff team who put this all together, and for the Taste Committee for the work that they've done over the past several months. Volunteers are the steam in our engine, and we could not do it without them. So on behalf of our staff team, our amazing volunteers, including our terrific board members, thank you for making our mission possible. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe. Thank you.